and it was very interesting. And although I hardly knew my way around, so much that has changed. Now comes the tough part when I try to share with you my my PowerPoint here. We already went through this, but am I going to be able to do it? I hope you'll bear with me. And how do I do this now? Share my screen, please. Now you're going to have to help me again.
Okay.
Where do we do it? Here we go. Share.
You got it.
And I've got it. Do you have it now?
Yay.
You can see it now. All right. Everybody can see it.
Not yet. Let me see.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Oh, there it is. It's coming up. There you go.
There we go.
There we
We've
go.
got it now.
Okay. And you've got only the screen with the all right.
With the map.
There we go. You are
Yeah.
screen sharing.
Correct.
Now, I just put my name there with those funny letters on top of a map of Iceland. And that, of course, is where I come from, and where I have more or less been working all my life, although I have had some considerable experience in doing work with other or in other countries, not working there, but with them as a public official from Iceland. So I just want to, you know, want you to know that this island is a large island. It's in the high Arctic. The Arctic Circle is just above it, and it has the largest part of the island is the highlands that are in the middle, and with these glaciers, and some of these glaciers are also very active volcanoes. I don't know if you see my pointer. Do you see my pointer? Can anybody answer if you see my pointer?
You see it? Yeah, I can see the pointer.
You see it. So people may know that in the past 2-3 years we've had intermittent eruptions right here. So you know where that is. And the famous eruption that they called the Alphabet Glacier that stopped all air traffic in Europe for quite a while is here, and nobody but us can pronounce it. Eyjafjallajökull is what is the name of it. And this is just to put you in give you a little bit of an overview of where geographically I come from. I was born in the capital city of Reykjavik in 1949, so I'm probably older than your parents, most of you. I went to a school called Reykjavik Grammar School, which was a very generalistic, very old school. You can trace it all the way back to the year 1100 or 1078, really. I'm the son of a fisherman, and my mother is a daughter of a fisherman. So I come from a fishing family, but I have no experience in fishing, but rather I was every summer on a farm in southern Iceland from when I was a very little boy until I was 16. But after I went to high school, I worked in the civil engineer's office in Reykjavik. And that's where I was introduced to urban planning, because a master plan has just been finished for the city of Reykjavik. That was sort of a comprehensive plan that had been done for the first time. Now, I went to the University of Waterloo from 1969 to 1973, where they had just started a degree in urban and regional planning at an honors level. And so I graduated there in 1973 as a Bachelor of Environmental Studies, BES, and nobody knows what that is. Doesn't matter where you are. My thesis, thesis there was on internal migration in Iceland. And that sort of then tells you that where sort of I was heading, although I had been working at an architect's office where we were doing master plans for some of these towns and villages. But while I was in Waterloo, I tried to pick up courses all over. I did computer science, philosophy, anthropology. This was sort of a follow-up from the education that I had gotten in high school, where we studied quite a number of subjects. And even if I was in the mathematics line, there were only 2 lines at that time. We had to do, in addition to Icelandic, we had to learn Danish, English, German, French, and a little bit of Latin. So you see, in the mathematics line, that's what we had to do. Now, after graduating from Waterloo, I went straight over to Northeast England and studied at the University of Newcastle upon Tyne. And I received my MPhil in urban planning design, as it was called, from there in 1975. Came back home to Iceland, worked as a regional planner in the Economic Development Institute of Iceland. These are different names always for different institutes that are then discontinued and new ones formed. I was there from 1975 to 88, and at the same time, I lectured at the University of Iceland in various geography courses and statistics, for example. Then, after a special institute for regional development was started up, I became the director for regional development there until that was moved from here to the north of Iceland. And then I became a specialist at an institute called the Economic Institute of Iceland. That was responsible for the national accounts for Iceland and was a economic consultancy institute for the Prime Minister. Then in 2001, I went over to the Ministry of Finance, of all places, and as assistant director, I was there until 2019 in different departments, ending my career there in the office of the minister himself, or herself. I had women too. All the while, I was participating in various international activities. I was on the board of a regional studies research institute. I participated in Nordic cooperation, of which we have a lot in Iceland and in the Nordic countries, and then also in OECD, the European Union, and more organizations like that. And of course, and I'm not going into it, but after the economic crisis, we had to work a lot with the International Monetary Fund that sort of took over after we had the financial crisis. Now, as far as personal life, I married my teenage sweetheart 1970 and she died in 2014. So I'm a widower. I have 3 boys and 6 grandchildren, 3 of each, 3 boys and 3 girls. I used to be a long distance runner. I have 4 marathons and about 50 half marathons under my belt. Climbed the Kilimanjaro, trekked in the Himalayas, Atlas Mountains, and all over Iceland. And finally, in the points that I've put up here, I've traveled to 45 countries in the world. So that is my sort of intro. I will stop sharing the screen now. Did that work okay for you who participate? All right.
So Siggi, maybe you can share a little bit about the different industries that you've worked in and sort of how your generalist education sort of helped you pivot into different areas and sort of apply your knowledge as a generalist.
Yeah, well, of course, for this long period that I was working, things have changed. And after I finished my education, sort of the environment was beginning to become more important consideration, but not that much. Just to give you an example, there was nobody was thinking about climate change when we graduated from Waterloo, although I recollect that I had read about the measurements of the increase in the CO2 levels in Hawaii, just to, that, but scientists were not sure if that would lead to global warming or cooling, because they were concerned about the cloud cover that might diminish the radiation of the sun. So just imagine that when I finished my education, it was people had become conscious but didn't know what it would lead to. And of course, what then, as far as I was concerned, being sort of and especially maybe after I stopped working directly with doing regional development plans for different outlying regions in Iceland, and started working more centrally in the first in these national institutes, and then for the ministry. All of that was sort of coming more and more into focus, and I was maybe the go-to guy for anything that had to do with the environment, but at the same time, I was gaining knowledge about them. You understand that I didn't come out of university with a backpack full of knowledge about all the things that have happened since then. There's been a lot of changes going on, and I think that if you are taught to make plans that are sort of holistic, that take everything into consideration, then if you live up to that, then by adding to your knowledge as you go, you can make an impact, even if when you started your journey you didn't know where it would lead, and you didn't have all the tools that were needed or that are being used now, like all these economic incentives, just to take an example, that to make people behave better for the environment. You know, nobody had ever heard about anything like that at the time. So I am for young people who are in university or coming out of university now, you know, I would just stress that you have no idea what's up ahead any more than I did, you know. But I think that at least I can say that the education I got at Waterloo prepared me as well as possible for that journey, or at least I am grateful for being able to use it. But I can imagine that there could be other people who ended up in something, you know, not as interesting, in my opinion. But I have had the luck to be able to participate in a lot of different things, you know, from taxation, from revising housing benefits and child benefits, and you name it. All of that, I think, you know, you can do so that it is logical and sort of taking or maybe not everything, taking a lot of things into account. If you just have the attitude of not being a specialist in anything really, can help you.
Thanks, Siggi. I want to say that if anyone has questions that they'd like to ask, please feel free to raise your hand. And I might just ask a couple of questions in the meantime. But this is the Q&A period. This is for you, you know, to ask your questions directly. So please don't be shy if you'd like to ask anything. But just building on what you were just saying, Siggi, as you know, a self-identified generalist, have you come up against resistance or, you know, a sense from the specialists that you've worked with, you know, that maybe you're not as qualified as they are, or, you know, have you had any tensions or challenges with specialists over the years?
It would be more that in, say, committee work where I've been representing the ministry, there have been people where I have not been afraid to apply what it is that I know that is not deep, but rather, in my opinion, white. I've been willing to apply that and then get a reaction that, well, I can't say anything about this. I'm not the specialist. That's more, it's more that like that. It's not, I have not had a lot of experience with people saying, you know, you don't know what you're talking about because I am the expert here. Never, you know, somehow I've been able to avoid being, you know, sort of being called out.
That's great. Timurl would like to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my question is kind of in two parts, both as like one as a planner and two as a person. How has
it's difficult? I have difficulty in hearing you.
Yeah, get back to me then I can put my headset on.
Okay, Timurl's gonna find his headset, and maybe that will be a little bit clearer.
Yeah, it was very unclear what he was saying.
Timurl's a planning student. Okay, are you thumbs up, Timurl? You ready to go?
I think this should be better.
Oh, much better.
Excellent. Okay. So yeah, my question's in two parts. One as a kind of planning student and two as a person. How have your experiences just around the world, both like professional experience around the world and traveling, informed your work and changed you as a person, just like in terms of perspectives and everything?
Well, I hope they have improved me coming. We are a fairly wealthy nation here, and to go around the world to see what the situation is like in many other places, if it doesn't make you appreciate what you have, then your eyes are closed. But of course, we also have, because we are sharing information a lot between the governments of the Nordic countries, and they are much more alike. Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland are at approximately the same level of economic development, and there it's been more, and we look to them, and in many ways, in our public policies, it helps to be able to look at and maybe emulate what is being done in similar situations. So that is very important. But on a personal level, like I said first, if you don't appreciate where you are after having been all around, then your eyes were closed while you were there.
All right, thank you.
You had another question, wasn't it? Was that both questions?
Yeah, I think that was both just kind of
All right.
getting
You're
that
good.
personal and professional.
Yeah, okay.
A two-sided question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Again, anyone wants to ask anything, just raise your hand. And some of you did submit some questions as part of the registration, so thank you for that. And we've got some of those questions that we can go to in the meantime. And I think one that's really useful, and a few of you asked this, is, I'll preface this by saying I meet a lot of alumni. And it's not uncommon for alumni to share that their career paths looking back have been circuitous. They may have come out of university thinking this is what they're going to do. It's a fairly straight line. And when they get a few years down the road, they look back and realize how windy their career paths have been. So with that in mind, Siggi, you've changed directions, or you've worked in different fields, as you mentioned, from finance to policy development, PR even, which is very different, climate change, urban planning, economic development. What sort of skill sets can students think about starting to build now that will give them that flexibility to be able to take new opportunities and know when those opportunities are right for them and at the right time? What do you think about that?
Well, I think you are right in that when you finish university, you start on a journey that you have no way of knowing where it will take you. In some cases, people do. If you study to be a dentist, you know that you can end up a dentist. But then I had a colleague who learned to be a dentist, and when I met him a few years after we finished university, he was saying to me, you got your education and you have your choices. I got my education and I have no choice. So I think one of the advantages of studying, at least the way I was taught at Waterloo, was to keep your options open. You do not know when you're 23 or 24, really what your character is going to be like when you're 54, And so I just say, really, you have to have an open mind. And I would say, keep on reading stuff that might help you, and don't block off anything go down every road that you think is interesting. I can't say anything other than that. To study for a process like planning, where you have to be holistic, have to take into consideration all different points of view. You know, you cannot have a tunnel vision. There's no way. There's no way you can do it. So you have to sort of fight if you have a tendency to thinking, I'm right. This is what we're going to do. But I'll give you an anecdote that one of our teachers, Professor Wright, when in first year, he taught us really a word. Of course, the English-speaking people would have known it. That is so important. Empathy. It is so important. But I would think at that time, you know, you could talk about it in general terms. And people were talking about citizen participation and planning and all that. But we didn't have a lot of tools to apply that at the time. I think today you would have much more knowledge of how to do that. Here, back in Iceland, if I was working in planning here in Iceland today, that has all been institutionalized into a bureaucratic process. So all you have to do is you do whatever plans you want to make, you send them out into a bureaucratic process, and then you tick in the box that you have contacted the local population, what have you, and everybody has their possibility to have a say, but there's no life in it. It's dead. And that's I am very glad that I'm not working in either making city plans or regional plans or environmental assessments in Iceland today. Very glad, because it's dead. And I think it at least in all of Europe it is, because we all go by the same regulations. I don't really know what the situation, the legal situation with that is in neither Canada now or the US.
Shinwike has her hand up, and there's a question in the chat. But before we move on, I just want to touch back on that, Siggi. Is there a solution to that? Like, is there something in your mind and from your many decades of experience, like, that could help start moving things in the right direction to bring the life back to that?
I am pessimistic in that, because people have tried to make sure that all different points of view are represented or have the possibility of making an input somewhere. But I think I would have to be a lot younger to have a more positive attitude towards it than I have now. And you people who are participating are younger, and you have the possibility. But keep the spirit alive and don't fall into this bureaucratic quagmire that this planning process, as I look at it, really from the outside, though, is now.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Chris's question. Thank you for sharing your amazing life journey. I'm in the library, so cannot speak loud. Have you ever struggled about whether it would be better to go deeper in a certain area as a specialist or to become a generalist as you are now? If so, what were your decision-making process, or what made you decide to become a generalist in the end?
Well, the short answer would be, I would not want to be a specialist, or more of a specialist in anything. But I think that I talked about a little bit when we were in high school here. Very old. This high school is so old. It's in a building that was built in 1848 or something, and they're still using it. And it was a classic, what we would call a classic education, based on the standards in Denmark. That we were a part of Denmark until just before I was born. And then I go from there to this very recently started program in Waterloo that tried to take in all sociology and economics and geography and all these things, and then gave us the possibility of expanding that by taking in courses that were not in the center of the program, and they were very positive in that we would choose from different fields stuff to use. Then you have a toolbox that, it may not be, like we said, it may not be a very deep toolbox, but it's got a lot of different tools in it. But it's always, it's your life that plays out how you can use what you have. I may have learned even a lot about how to approach life by being a farmhand, working. When I was a kid, we were tiny and we did things that we could do. And then as we grew older, then we got more and more important things that we were responsible for. And that's another thing that you have to, when you do something, to feel that you're responsible for it and be put in a position where you're not just a tiny piece in the puzzle, but rather that you have something to say that is going to affect the final picture. I don't know.
Great, thank you. Chris, if there's more that you want to add to that question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. And, maybe this is also a good segue. So, for the students who are here, looking ahead to entering the job market and, building a career new to the field, what's your advice to people entering the job market now? And I guess, there's an add-on to this question that was submitted. So your advice for new people entering the job market, and if you were to restart your career now, what skills would you prioritize learning?
Well, if I was starting now, I think I would like more to know more about what it is that makes people like have the it would be like I have it down here, how I would like to know more about how people experience their surroundings, and I would also, how do they and why do they react to stimuli and to incentives? The knowledge of and like in economics, it's been sort of very simplistic, the way you're supposed to react to, say, an economic incentive. Behavioral economics, they tell you much more about what is going on inside, what makes you react the way you react. And I would think today that would be one of the things that I would like to know more about. We did some economics at Waterloo, but that was us. All economics was at that time based on very simplified and simplistic ideas about what goes on in our mind, that we were all trying to maximize our profits, that we had perfect knowledge, etc. Now we know how people behave with incomplete knowledge and with different setups in our mind. It's very important in planning to realize how different people react to why they have different opinions. Try to put, like I said, with empathy, try to put yourself in other people's shoes, because in most cases in physical planning, you're not going to live there. you're only, making something that will then be built or rebuilt, which is now, of course, even here in Iceland, much more being done of tearing down buildings and building again more dense, more density. How is that going to affect? We are trying to get out of being so reliant on automobiles. That's not an easy task. And there, you both have to realize what are the physical constraints, but also how do people react to different incentives, and because all the time, and this you can clearly hear, I'm thinking sort of from the point of view of the authorities of the government, who is responsible for sort of putting in place the different policies and things that affect the way we go through life.
That's great. Thank you. Let me take a look at the other questions here. That's a great question. So this one comes from a planning grad who didn't specialize in anything either, and wonders how they can leverage the varied experience that they got during co-op to secure a full-time position. So, this is like, how do I sell myself as a generalist? How can I leverage that to break into the job market and secure something full-time? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's really too late to ask me that, because seriously, in my career, it was always one thing led to another, one thing led to another. I actually never applied for any of the positions that I had my entire life, with the exception of when I started. After that, it was always like I evolved. There was a change of organization. Would you take the position, etc. That's how it. So I have very limited experience of trying to sell myself. And I understand it's a tough world. Both selecting your career and having children is something you should do when you're young.
So with these various opportunities that came up, how did you know they were the right opportunities for you? Like, were you just, is it a gut feeling? Were there things that you weighed out? Like, those are big decisions to make. How did you make them?
It's a good question, and I have to go back in time to really think, what was that like? What was that like? Because I cannot remember any point when I was at the situation where I'd say, should I do this or should I do that? I can tell you one thing, and because I think Dean Mutry is still listening here, my colleague from university. I am sure this is how, you come to a point on the road where the road goes one way and there's another road goes the other way. We were encouraged to get a summer job when we were at Waterloo. And so I think it was after the second year. So I apply for a few of these openings and I don't get one. So I go back home and I am thinking, what would have happened if I had been offered a job and taken the left path? I'd probably still be there. This is the kind of, you don't realize it when you're there. You can only realize it afterward. What would have happened? I can only say it, I think, because I have never had to choose between two jobs or anything like that. So I'm not a good authority on choices in your career. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Maybe we can kind of come to it from a slightly different angle. So over your career, you've worked with a lot of different colleagues in different areas, lots of different personalities. Are there common characteristics that you think makes someone successful? You know, like any sort of like common traits or characteristics across all of your experiences and all of the people you've had the opportunity to work with that you know, that you can share.
Well, first of all, I haven't worked with many planners. I haven't worked with many people with education similar to the one I had. I have worked with economists, with lawyers, you know, and then I've worked with a lot of politicians that come from all different, you know, and they're a different breed because we, you know, you're not really working with them, you're working for them. So I think that a lot of them, they would have like lawyers and economists. It would have been better for them if they had a little bit more of stuff thrown in, like sociology or, you know, stuff. I think so. I think it was an advantage for me to have this, even if I didn't know as much as they did either about economics or legal aspects, because of course it in a republic like ours, where you know, then you have to know what you can do within the confine, the constraints of the law. So you have to know what it works like. Anyways, I have been lucky enough to be able to see that people are disadvantaged when they have not had sort of, even if it's a bit superficial knowledge. But then when you need to ask these people about something special, then it's good to have them. That's not the problem. I would not want my surgeon who did an operation on my leg this week to be a generalist that only roughly knew what he was going to do. That's a totally different thing. But you also want them to be a psychologist because you want to talk to him and he has to tell you, you know, make you feel comfortable. That's another aspect of it. But, you know, you would not want him to say, oh, I've never seen this before.
So that ties back maybe with what you were talking about earlier with empathy, you know, having the ability to put yourself in another person's shoes and to, you know, communicate as a human being rather than as a professional.
Yeah.
At the same time.
You know, I after, you know, this long career that was more or less successful, I have no regrets of having not delved into something that you know, I had an uncle who was a lawyer. I had an uncle who was a doctor. You know, I have never regretted not gone down that way. I could have done that. Never.
And do you think that there's something about your personality that makes you best suited to being a generalist?
No, I think I just got the education to have it. I think so. I don't think I am no better than anybody. I just, you know, but I have to admit that I read a lot. So, you know, I'm still reading. So I try to expand. This is just to give as an advice to young people, you know, expand your horizon. Don't narrow it. Expand it.
And are there, do you have favorite sources of information that helps you keep learning?
I couldn't really, you know, say
It's as varied as you are?
yeah, I think so.
Okay, fantastic. I have a couple of fun questions that were submitted. I love this. What is your favorite Icelandic word?
Well, it had been written down, so I knew about, knew this question was coming,
Yeah.
but I can tell you one thing. You know, of course, it is my mother tongue. I speak other languages as well, but it's my mother tongue. But I can tell you one thing, and it might surprise you. There was a contest a couple of years back, and people in Iceland were asked what they thought was the prettiest word in the language. And you will never guess what it was. And I can tell you both what the word is and what the meanings of the parts are. But the word is ljósmóðir. Ljós is light, and móðir is mother. Same, it's Anglo-Saxon.
Okay.
And what is a light mother? And now I've talked so much about it, I've forgotten what it's in English.
Ljósmóðin.
Ljósmóðir.
So is it something or someone that makes another person light up?
Come to life.
Oh. So is it when something comes to life?
No, a person.
Oh, when a person comes to life. Oh, I like that. I like that.
Oh. You know what it
Beautiful.
is? No, hold on. And Dean will see that he will know that I sometimes blank on words. I'm blanking on this now.
That's
And
okay.
I will be,
Wonder if I can look it up at the same time. We're getting also.
it's
Go
a
ahead.
midwife.
It's a midwife.
Midwife.
Ah.
That was the word I was blanking on because it also is Anglo-Saxon,
Yes.
but I'm not saying that's my favorite word.
Yep. But
But
that
I'm
was
just
the
saying
winning.
that was the winning word. But it's a pretty word. Light, that a midwife is a light mother, brings a person into the light.
That's really nice. Wow.
So that's how I'm going to answer that.
Okay.
I'm not saying my favorite word is Eyjafjallajökull or something like that.
All right. Well, we have about 8 minutes left in the hour. And I see in the chat a couple of people have had to leave for work. But I'll just wrap up with a couple of more questions. But if anyone has a question they'd like to ask, certainly we'd love to get your last questions in. Someone has asked what your favorite country to work in or to work with has been.
Well, I have only worked in Iceland.
Okay.
I've never had an employment. I have worked with people in the Scandinavian countries,
Okay.
all of them. So I couldn't really, you know, and of course I studied in Canada and I studied in England, but that was way back. So in many ways, even if they are furthest away from the Nordic countries culturally, the Finns are a very special people. And, you know, I would almost say that they are the ones that maybe are a bit like us in some respects. So outsiders, we're geographic outsiders. In the Nordic cooperation that we participate in, public officials from all the Nordic countries, everybody speaks their own language except the Finns and the Icelanders. They have to speak another language than their own. So that makes us sort of special, but I think that they have shown resilience, and you know, it's not easy. It was said about the Finns that they were the only country in the world that had lost a war with Russia twice and were still an independent country. But of course, that was before Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania became independent countries.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great reflection. All right, well, as we wrap up, again, if there's any last minute questions, please feel free to raise your hands. But any sort of final pieces of advice for the students who are in the room, you know, thinking about wrapping up their university studies and facing the starting steps on the journey of building their own careers that will hopefully be 5 decades strong at some point?
I think there are two things. You have to be courageous. You know, be courageous is one thing, and very much more important, keep an open mind. Keep an open mind through your life. You know, do not get narrowed into a tunnel. Last words.
I love that. I love that. And could not agree more. It's funny you mentioned as an age 54 earlier, and that's my age right now. And the older I get and the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. You know, I think that's
Another
important.
thing you will experience, and the young people, you know, at the meeting, they don't know anything about it. But the older you get, the faster time flies.
It does. Absolutely. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate your time, spending your time here with us today. We'll be following up with an email with a short survey, just asking you what you thought and ideas for future alumni office hours. And also, Siggi has agreed to share his email address in case anyone would like to reach out to him. Maybe you're planning a trip to Iceland. I think he would have some great suggestions for travel and other you know, we'll be able to answer any other questions you have about his career. So thanks again for spending the time with us today. Wishing you all the best for the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. That's lovely to see everyone saying thank you in the chat.
Yeah.
Nice. And we...
Take your time, Corey. Take your time. That was good. Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Pause that.
Well, yeah.